Welcome to the Ethicsverse, the coolest place to be every Thursday at noon Eastern. I'm coming at you live from California. We got the one and only Ronnie Feldman. What's happening, Ronnie?
Hello, everybody. Hello.
Ronnie's from L&E, Learnings and Entertainments. We got a great show for you today. So as we're going through our introductions, as always, like we like to say here on the Ethicsverse, your network is your network. So drop your URL in the chat and connect with somebody and take advantage of this collegial community that we're all a part of. Today, we're talking about elevating E&C, learning in the age of distraction. So we're going to be talking about some different tactics on how you can push your learning out and convey your messages better. Here's our link tree. If you haven't followed Ethico everywhere we are to be followed, I highly encourage you to do it. Each week, we put out the best clips on our LinkedIn page. So follow us, follow the Ethico homepage. You can follow me and check out our YouTube channel when you're doing dishes tonight. You can see some great replays of our world famous podcast, The Ethics Experts, and of course, all the replays from the Ethicsverse. We're going to be giving away world famous Ethico book giveaway for all the best contributions in the chat. So for those of you who have not won, today is your day. We're giving away 5 books. We're featuring Christian Hunt's Humanizing Rules. This is all about behavioral science. But of course, you can pick anything from the Ethico Spotlight Library. So the Ethico Library is full of books. From Tom Fox, from Christy Grant Hart, from Matt Silverman, the one and only Mary Shirley. Everybody, all the thought leaders that have books out, we try to add those to the library. And yeah, your job is to sharpen your saw. And what better way to sharpen your saw than with the Ethico ecosystem? So look at all these awards that we won. Round of applause to the Ethico team that earned these awards quarter after quarter. Check out G2 if you're thinking about getting a new case management system, a new disclosure tool. Our reviews speak for themselves. If you have not checked out the Great Women in Compliance podcast, part 2, the second iteration of it, I encourage you to do it. Lisa Fine and Hema Lomax are the leaders of that podcast, and they always have great guests, so check that out. And then the Gallo cast is coming out every single month with my brother Gio. We are continuing the year free going into 2024 because we had such great success with it last year. One of the biggest risks that people see is that transition risk. So by getting a year free, we can really get everything dialed in for you. So if you'd like to explore that, hit that QR code. And yeah, next week, we are going to be doing trending topics in ethics and compliance in HR. So you're not going to want to miss that. And here's me with my new glasses. Let me know what you think of those. Real quick, before we get into this, I'd love to kind of crowdsource the audience a little bit. We have historically at conferences gotten, a platinum sponsorship and gotten the t-shirts. And if any of you have been to the SCCE or the HCCA in the last year, you maybe got one of our t-shirts. And we're trying to figure out, is that really a value to folks? Or should we divert that money into sort of better giveaways, more books at our booth? So if you like option 1 and you like those t-shirts that we put out, please drop a 1 in the chat. And if you think that should be diverted to something more valuable, better booth swag or better books to give away, go ahead and drop a 2 in the chat. We always want to be adding value as Ethico to our marketplace. And yeah, we need your input on what works and what doesn't. So now that you've got a chance to stare at my brand new glasses, please drop a 3 in the chat if you'd like me to wear those next week. And of course, the one and only Ronald Feldman. He's the founder of Learnings and Entertainments. If you don't know Ronnie, you will after today, and you will love him hopefully as much as I do. He has a network. He runs a network of comedians that make short training for ethics and compliance, and they make it really fun. So Ronnie, great to see you. Great. So glad you're here, buddy.
Hey, yeah. Well, geez, that I don't know where that photo came from, but it certainly looks a little bit better than me, so I'll take it. Hey, so everybody, so happy to talk to you guys today. There's, a couple just sort of high-level points that we're going to be going through. Let's advance 1 slide, if you don't mind. I want to just talk about the fact that we want to start with the premise that blending entertainment and learning is helpful. We've done whole webinars and podcasts on this, so we can dissect that a whole bunch of different ways. So we basically believe that it helps break down barriers. It helps open up conversations. This is it makes emotional connections. It increases your visibility and exposure. If things are short and fun, you can put them in more places and get higher rotation. And one of the great things about blending entertainment and learning is you can get other people to help spread that message for you. Compliance can be very serious and scary and intimidating. And Sometimes we're a little finger waggy when we shouldn't be. But being short and fun and positive doesn't undermine the message. It can do all of these great things for you. So we're taking that you're welcome to challenge it because there's good behavioral science behind it. But the thing we really want to focus on today is showing you different techniques, different styles that are used in everybody's everyday work lives, and then talk about them and why they're advantages and disadvantages of each. So just to finish the setup, let me practice. Did I just advance the slide? Nope, I got to push it. Okay, great. I love this little John Cleese quote, which is from Monty Python fame. He says, the main evolutionary significance of humor is it gets us from the closed mode to the open mode faster or quicker than anything else. So really, the point is obvious. Like, even if it's something short and fun that's casually tied to your message, it then gets them ready to receive the very important message that you're about to say. So obviously, if you blend entertainment and learning, great, but also pairing those two things together, put the fun thing next to the important thing, also is helpful.
There's another great John Cleese quote that says, a wonderful thing about laughter is that it destroys any kind of system dividing people. You know,
yeah. When
that guard is up or somebody's not engaged, that really does knock it down. And then my all-time favorite John Cleese quote, which I told you about, he who laughs most learns best.
It's so great. You know, John Cleese back after Monty Python, he actually made, this is sort of in the VHS days, he got into whole business where he was making these sales training techniques using humor. So it's one of the reasons he's got all these great quotes, because he was really on the speaking circuit, really talking about how humor connects people. Same way music does, right?
Yeah.
You know, it connects people. Okay. So let's get into it. We want to talk about different entertainment devices today. We're going to focus on kind of 4, but they're all interconnected. The basic idea is the more that we mirror the entertaining ways that we consume information in our everyday lives, the more successful we'll be. We're work people some of the time, and we're people all of the time. So you go home, you watch TV, you listen to the radio, we listen to podcasts, we read books. All of these devices are ways that we learn things. And I think the more that we bring that into the compliance world, the more successful we'll be. It doesn't have to be a bad click e-learning. It doesn't have to be a legalese slide. There's lots of ways you can separate the message from the delivery mechanism that will help you be more successful.
Yeah, and I think to your point, Ronnie, we're like surrounded by all of these techniques. We're bombarded by them. And I think as you raise your own awareness to them, you start to notice them a lot more. So like when you're scrolling on Instagram or you're scrolling on TikTok, what are the videos that you end up stopping on? How is it that they're formatted, or what kind of hook is being utilized that's really, getting your attention in that attention sort of based activity that is that doom scrolling? Like, what are those things? If we can start to borrow those, we can incorporate them and get our message out a lot better, to Ronnie's point.
Yeah, you always use the word pattern disruptor, which I really like. It's like there's a sea of information that's being thrown at employees. So you really need to stand out, because remember, everyone has a preconceived notion of what compliance is, and it ain't good. So right. We need to do something to get their attention and change that expectation, and then repeat that message over and over again. And if you don't want message fatigue, you got to be interesting.
Well, I mean, to that exact point, if we have this kind of a reputation due to another experience that somebody had in another organization, or due to our predecessor, or due to just how the program is set up, you can do something very small that will feel like a massive pattern interrupt, to Ronnie's point. That's how we can break the attention in a really meaningful way. And that's how we can start to address this branding issue, which we're going to talk about more a little bit later. Small changes. I mean, just think about it. If you came in, tomorrow with, pink hair or blue hair, your entire vibe would be changed immediately, right? I guess that's a pretty drastic change, but you get my point. Small changes to how we present ourselves to the workforce ends up really altering, their perception of our role in the organization and in their lives.
Yeah, well, let's talk about the way this is sort of going to go. We're going to show some examples from non-compliance, and then show some examples from compliance, and then talk about it. So why don't you tee up we want to talk about music, songs, and jingles. I guess I just said I was going to tip to you, and then I started talking. But like music, I love music for a variety of reasons. One, it's an interesting way to convey information without having to tell jokes. It's weird enough to have music tied to these very important topics. But here, I jumped ahead. Why don't you go ahead and play some stuff?
All right. So we're going to do this call and response game. No cheating. Drop into the chat. Put your cursor right in the chat where it says send a message, and get ready to let us know what this sound is. $1,000 points per first answer.
Farmers, bum, 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 bum. We are farmers, bum, 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 bum.
Good. That one was a little lob there to get us started. Ooh, sorry, talking over that one. Jackie, 1,000 points. What's that one, gang? Old Twitter. That's what X used to be called. Good. Wow, people are fast on these.
We the best music. We the best music.
Little DJ Khaled for ya. All right. So a lot of good points in there. My goodness, look at these. All right. So let's go ahead and award those points. Good job, everybody. The point is those little sound prints, those little sound imprints put you into a certain mood. So talk to us why music works, Ronnie.
Well, yeah, I mean, so music is really interesting. And what we call those in the biz musical stings, right? These little like things that make that, because it's really just a little, it's just a little thing, right? Of either verbal or musical. But there's a lot of science behind it. It talks about making emotional connections with people. It activates the reward centers of our brain. I personally I separate the idea behind like a full song, which has a beginning, a bridge and an ending and sometimes a story. That's like the old schoolhouse rock. For those of my generation, we learned basic things through song. People still do that today. But I love the fact that you can play it over and over and over again, right? So you get that repetition. And you know what? You can listen. The original idea when we first started making music videos on compliance was that you could play it as hold music while you're waiting to get on your Teams call or whatever, or walk-in music at a meeting. So there's lots of ways that music can work. But also what I said at the beginning, which is that like sometimes when you're dealing with a global audience, sometimes wordplay can be difficult, but music tends to be thematic. So you're getting like the sound of the music, you're getting the words that you're using, and it's weird enough to have a song about conflicts of interest without having to actually make jokes. So it's already entertaining and tends to work well globally. Did you have other things you wanted to add to that?
No, I just think it's probably one of the most underused mechanisms that's probably the most powerful. I mean, the most popular thing in the world is probably music, So, again, it's easy to leverage if we're a little creative and we can make some small tweaks to it. So I think you summed it up right. Let's talk about a few of these examples. So maybe we can start with you want to take us through these?
Yeah. I want to skip the order just a little bit because we this is just a case study. We did a webinar on this with the Yum Brand team, and we literally changed the name of their department and created a little jingle for them. So I'm not going to play the whole video, but we now they're not called the compliance department. They're called the taste team because Yum is like KFC, Taco Bell, Pizza Hut. And so we named the team TASTE, which stands for Trust, Accountability, Support, Togetherness, Ethics. And now we attach this little jingle to all their policies and trainings, just a little hook in the way that we just did with the HBO and the Netflix. So I just want to play that, show how it can be applied. Let's see.
It's TASTE. Trust, accountability, support, togetherness, ethics. It's TASTE. Trust, accountability, support, togetherness, ethics.
We're all different, and embracing those differences makes us better. I don't care if you dip your fries in your shake or put mayo on everything. We all need to do our part to make sure that the workplace is safe, fair, and productive for everybody. That means holding each other accountable and speaking up to report inappropriate behavior when we encounter it. Harassment can come in many forms, such as offensive or derogatory jokes, racial or ethnic slurs, unwanted or inappropriate advances, and it can sometimes be unintentional. But that's no excuse. Remember, integrity is not something we have or don't have. It's something we have to work at every day, and it's important even when no one is watching. I don't have to agree with you, fry-dipping mayo lovers, but dagnammit, I respect you. Questions? Contact us for advice, support, or to report a concern. Have good taste.
It's TASTE.
See, little sting there, you know?
Yeah,
Little
we put
tasting.
By the way, I was trying to just play the first part and I couldn't figure out how to stop the video. So
No, that was cool. It was cool to see the whole thing, you know, see the content of it, and then, you know, on the front and the back end to see that hook, you know?
Yeah, well, so that was the point I wanted to make. So no matter what the content is, whether it's something we made for them or they do themselves, they just add that it's TASTE, woo, and then sometimes they play the thing. And anyway, it's the same dopamine hit that we just talked about. Right. So I wanted to show a video. This was made a couple years ago by Virgin Airlines. Joe and Nick, if you can help me, I only wanted to play 30, 45 seconds just to make the point. If you could help me figure out how to stop it once they start it. But this is an example of a music.
I got some safety tips that you gotta know, and trust me, it's something that you wanna hear. So honey, sip your lips and enjoy the show before we move into the stratosphere. Yeah. So won't you buckle your seatbelt, put them tight, and keep you in that chair until we turn off that light.
There we go. I figured it out. So I like that example because, first of all, safety is very important, but nobody pays attention. So you've seen over the last 5 to 10 years, a lot of airlines who take a very important message and they started finding different ways to do it. And they made a music video. There's also a very famous case study in Australia where people were dying because they were crossing train tracks. Does everybody know the Dumb Ways to Die song? They won all sorts of awards. They made this song called Dumb Ways to Die, and it's this animated thing that shows all these dumb ways people die, including, stepping onto train tracks. And it went viral. Now they got video games and different music videos. So you can look that up. It's a big case study.
Did it stop people from going on the tracks?
Yeah, it was super successful. This is maybe 7-8 years ago. It's one of the inspirations I had when I first started making music videos on compliance.
Oh, I love it.
Oh, right. Really important. And it just sort of blew up. All right. So I'm going to just play a minute of a little music video about compliance to show how you can do it on these topics. And then we'll talk about it some more.
It's the right thing time. Did you ever have a moment of concern when you're not quite sure the right from wrong? We're never wrong. You could sit there and ignore it, hope it goes away, or you could pay attention to this catchy workplace song.
If a problem pops up, compliance questions big and small, there's resources to help you step up and make the call.
There's a manager who will listen just fine, a compliance staff, the code, and don't forget the helpline. There's a lot of ways to get help. Don't waste any time.
Don't waste any time. Inspiration is great.
Right thing. Anytime there's doubt at play. Right thing.
When things go astray.
You can do the right thing.
There you go.
Love it.
So anyway, how do you want to do this? You want to field questions and talk about it? We have
There's some great comments in the chat. Amy was saying that they use those videos like this at their compliance training during compliance week, in between sessions. And there's just so many ways that you can leverage these kind of things to kind of pepper them into your communications. What are some ways that you see folks leverage videos like this, Ronnie? Whether they're making them themselves on CapCut or they're using a company like you to build something to kind of do a full rebrand of their program. How do they fit it in sort of tactically in the nooks and crannies of their communication?
Yeah, well, so here's the way I'll answer it. Like all the things that we're going to talk about open up new avenues for you to communicate, right? Whether it's music, some of the things we're talking about. So I think some of the things we're going to talk about apply to all these devices. Because everyone's first instinct is compliance week, which is great. It in some ways, this drives me crazy because if we allow ourselves to be fun and interesting during compliance week, why don't we allow ourselves to be fun and interesting throughout the whole year? So the main point I want to make is that the repetition, the increased ability to get access to more training and comms channels will open if you try some of these things. So the monthly post in the push is a common one, right? I'm going to post something and push out an email or a newsletter. You use that to drive traffic to resources. So you get the hit on the video, but you're also teaching them where to go and you can measure the click-through rate. So these are great for that. Just so again, it's like a musical hook, a reward, so that they know when they click on the compliance thing, it's going to be something positive. And by the way, the next time it's going to be next to your corruption policy or your code of conduct or whatever. So it's a way to drive traffic. And then some of the other things just music can do specifically, which is walk-in music at the sales meeting, right? Play between speakers at the sales meeting. You can play it, you can give it to leaders and say, play this to kick off your Monday morning Teams meeting. It's like a short, fun thing about compliance that can now be played in other ways, whereas they would never play it if you're giving them a slide that says, these are the FCPA laws. So, I
mean, if we're going to be crowdsourcing risk intelligence, we talk about this all the time. If we're going to crowdsource risk intelligence from the human sensors, we have to hack the mind of those human sensors, and we have to play with what we have available. And that kind of a little hook, something musical like that kind of a little hook attached to this rebrand is so smart. And Krista Wolf just got featured on SEC Magazine this week, so I appreciate you should absolutely check that out or follow her because she is an absolute genius at this, at really kind of not only rebranding with like a different energy, but bringing that different energy throughout the organization and making ethics and compliance extremely approachable and extremely human. And I think in doing that, to Ronnie's point from before, all these other channels start to open up. All these other opportunities for your message to get out there and for you to leverage other middle managers, for example, in the organization, start to become unlocked when you, again, humanize yourself more and have a more human-centric approach to your communications.
To button it up, Krista, I've gotten to know her. She came on my podcast. One of the things they did with music is they actually wrote a song, had their team write a song, their compliance team, right? They said, hey, let's all work on it. And then they each sung different parts. And they got other people involved, and I love that. So it didn't cost any money. It took their time and effort, but they had fun making it, and they got others involved in it, and found that and then people got to know them on a personal level.
I'm sure that whole program is really phenomenal, and the way that they've really, I would just push you to learn as much about that program as you can, because the stuff they're doing is very kind of next level, and they're getting those kind of results. I love it. So thanks for sharing that story. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
All right. Commercial parity is device number 2. Why don't we dive into that?
Yes. So what do we want to talk about? All right. So the whole idea of commercials in general, I'm a big fan of this, right? So there's the style thing. So we're going to show you some examples. Obviously, we all watch commercials, right? They're sometimes character specific, sometimes they're musical. Like they're usually, but they're short They're simple and they have some entertainment value, right? They're provocative in some way, but they're not boiling the ocean, right? We're saying a simple message, and then it's go here for more information. This is really helpful for speak up programs. This is really helpful for compliance and also if you think about commercials, they show up where you are. So the idea of something is short and simple and has some entertainment value. Not only could you do the post and push, but you can embed that in another department's training. You can embed that in another department's newsletter. You can, again, have leaders play that during the regular course of business. You can give it to ethics ambassador programs and say, share this out. There's just so many between speakers. There's lots of ways to use it. If it's short and has some positivity to it. So let's talk about some, why don't you show some examples in the real world, and then we'll show some examples in compliance.
Great.
Yeah, just your typical Super Bowl car ad. Right?
Or a hilarious beer ad.
Or whatever ad this is.
Whatever.
But it's a Tide ad.
What?
It's a Tide ad.
What makes it a Tide ad?
There are no stains. Look at those clean clothes. What else would this be an ad for?
It's really hard to pick which ones to show. There's so many fun ones out there.
I know. But again, it's Super Bowl season. So every big brand that has a Super Bowl slot, they're trying to do that pattern interrupt and make the most memorable ad. And this is like a massive display. So there's going to be a lot of things that you'll be able to see, when we were talking earlier about kind of devices folks use, you'll be able to see those this weekend if you watch the Super Bowl, of course. But it's really all about, to Ronnie's point, that pattern interrupt, a way to reframe information, convey information in a more memorable, novel way, and overcome that anxiety trap. Should we jump to the next video?
Yeah.
That attention trap is what I meant.
Yeah.
We need some of that at our office, I think. All right, so let's walk through the value of these commercials. So short and simple, entertaining with a familiar wrapper. What else?
Well, that's right. And I guess I jumped the gun on it. So it's again, simple. Usually the simpler the point, like if you can think of what your elevator message is and build your commercial around that, that's helpful. And then it's a tease. And so I use this device a lot with my clients, because the whole point is we want to promote ethics compliance as a positive, helpful resource. Come talk to us. You don't need to know everything. We want to be part of the process earlier, not later. We're not here to clean up messes. We're here to work with you. So commercials for compliance itself is a valuable thing, and it's really helpful for speak up, because we all know that everybody says that they'll speak up, and we all know that the stats say that they won't, because of all the social and behavioral issues around that. So there's benefit in playing commercials over and over and over again about the hotline and all the safe ways that you can speak up. That repetition is really important. So I love the idea that commercials can fit into all of these mediums. Slack, Yammer, all these other devices that compliance typically don't use to communicate, mostly because you don't have anything, you're not sharing interesting things. If you have interesting things to share, you get access to these channels, right? They'll open up to you. And then styles wise, like, look, there's a million times, there's spokespeople, which we want to talk about separately. There's musical commercials, parodying. That's a hard word to say. Parodying. How do you say that?
Just one more time.
Parodying these different devices are really helpful. They already exist. Find one that you like. It doesn't have to be the expensive car commercial. It can be anything. Did you have some that you like, or do you want me to just show a couple examples?
Well, yeah. I just want to kind of keep hammering this home. What I was alluding to before, you kind of discussed with Krista and her team coming up with that music video. Like, you just have to do something, and don't worry about it looking silly. Don't worry about it not being perfect. You have to start doing things a little bit different if you're going to, really start to activate these folks. Like, it's such a massive pattern interrupt, but those tools are on your phone, and you can use, TikTok's, TikTok's editor or CapCut or, the Instagram editor. Like all these things are right there. You just have to be willing to do it and put yourself out there a little bit. So yeah, I'd love to see some of these compliance commercials. We had a question in the Q&A. Yeah, we're going to be diving into those right now. So Ronnie, why don't you take it from here and we can see the next one.
So here's a couple that we've made that again weren't particularly expensive to make, but I wanted to show a couple of different styles. Each one's about a minute. I'm going to do the code commercial first. Let's do that.
Long, boring, ignored. Your company's code of business conduct, hidden in plain sight in the vast wastelands of your company's intranet. Lonely and forgotten. Until now! Sleek aerodynamic design, utilitarian constructive interior engineered for ergonomic perfection. Reintroducing the Code of Business Conduct. Policies, rules, and regulations, we got them. Our values, responsibilities, and ethical obligations, right there. Guidelines and helpful tips, yes. How to raise a concern? It's here. Generic pictures of people smiling? Of course. You want to prevent problems before they occur? You need the Code of Business Conduct. Available everywhere you do business. Hard copy and digital formats, multiple font colors. You might not want to read it, but you should, because smart, well-intentioned people sometimes make mistakes that cause problems, and that can be a real bummer. Limited offer? Not really. It's always available. Check it out today.
Generic pictures of people smiling? It's great. Well, but I mean, it also sends another message, which again, like you're putting something into it, right? So whether it's a video that you've made yourself or it's a series of these kinds of commercials, it's showing that your organization is committed to building this culture of integrity. We spend a lot of time talking about it and putting a lot of words on pieces of paper. But if folks are not reminded of that consistently, then you're going to fall into sort of the status quo stereotype. And that's what I think a lot of us are trying to break free of to get some of those better results in their programs.
Yeah, I'll add one more thing just behind the scenes on that. Part of it is like, I'm sure people on this webinar have this issue. You fight to get like an updated code of conduct, and you're like, oh, it's so great now. Actually, it's interactive and it's color. Like that's the bar that we're dealing with. It's color and it has pictures. But I think we can take it to a whole nother level. Obviously, some of this costs time and money, but obviously promoting the fact that these resources are available doesn't have to be that complicated.
Yeah, and I mean the ROI of more employee engagement in a risk, to provide risk intelligence is like that's a very easy case to make when you look at the scale of what these types of efforts or investments cost. So hey Philippe, what's happening, man? We have a great question from Philippe. I'd love you to weigh in on it, Ronnie. So one of the challenges at times is how to really make people engage with that. Click to watch or listen. There's a sense of messaging fatigue. So how do we overcome that?
Well, yes, I'm glad you actually asked that. I just worked with one of my clients on this. They were like, they were using some of our videos, but they weren't getting the click-through rates. And I was like, show me what you're doing. And it was an email, and it's like, hey, from your compliance team, integrity is very important. Our CEO believes in this, and it's part of our core values, and we want to make sure we do it every day. Click and watch this video, and then a link. Like nobody's going to click that, right? They've already tuned out. So the more that you can, visuals are helpful, fun picture, and a tease. Fun compliance video, a musical code of conduct commercial, like any of these things that sort of entice, this won't be your info security people won't like this, but you're creating clickbait, right? You want to create clickbait.
Your job is in jeopardy is a great subject line to get open.
But truthfully, like anything, like you Rickroll people, do people know that? Like the whole Rickroll thing was all sorts of links, things to get you to click on something, and always be Rick Astley singing, going to give you up. But yeah, there is a benefit to that, getting them to click, because by the way, you can measure that. For you guys in the pharma device world, the Office Inspector General for HHS said that informal communication counts. In all these
of
things,
course it counts. It probably counts more.
It counts. It's more effective than completion rates for courses, which is what we all do, and we know that. Sure, but we know that means nothing, because that they're not learning anything if it's that's all you're tracking. So anyway, I hope that answers.
The DOJ guidance is all about like, is the program working? Is it effective? It's not, is it effective in the bounds of a very formal communication? Is it effective in practice? And so for it to be effective, you have to take advantage of all those things available, to Ronnie's point. And a huge one that again gets overlooked and underutilized is the informal communication channel. So back to Philippe's question of like, how do we overcome this like messaging fatigue? There are some hacks perhaps. I think what you would say is that it's kind of a question of like, where this communication, like what channel is being utilized for the communication. If it's email, again, talk to the SDR team or talk to the marketing team to say, or just do a Google search yourself or ChatGPT, some subject hooks for emails to get those open and A/B test those. We have to keep trying things and we have to keep figuring out how this engine works if it's going to produce what we want. If it's within, your Slack channel, again, I'm not sure, Philippe, maybe you can weigh in what those major, communication channels are that you're starting to see or that you're most concerned with messaging fatigue occurring. But, putting those, around presentations, like Ronnie said, that's a way, when you already kind of have that, that real estate, or if you can occupy that real estate, that's a great place to, get them, beforehand. What other ones, Ronnie, whether it's through like a Slack channel or something like that?
Well, here's how it's
sorry, Philippe just said it's all about Slack right now. So how do you get people? So this is a great, thank you so much.
Well, so I'll answer that in a sec. It's back to the point about if it's short and fun, it opens up these possibilities for you. So there's typically the post and push, put the fun thing next to the important thing, and drive traffic there any way that you can. That's email, that's your newsletter banner, that's your Slack channel, that's your Yammer. It does take time because they're not, Slack, you have to, it's like any community, you have to create a community. And the way you create a community and followers is to present things that are interesting and fun. So it does take a little bit of time to do that. And the other idea back is the idea of commercials is give it to other people so you can embed it in the business. So give it to a leader, play this during your Zoom call and follow our Slack channel. Right. There's a
tag someone in this message, whatever. I mean, there's ways to kind of get engagement depending on what your Slack setup is. But you said something important, Ronnie, and you said it's about, building a community and like presenting things. Things is a plural word. So like, we're never going to put one thing out and then that's going to be the silver bullet. And now, everybody is, providing all this risk intelligence across the organization. If you're going to do a true rebrand and you're going to try to engage folks differently, you have to have a bunch of, you have to have a bunch of points on that line or a bunch of, manifestations of this, a bunch of pieces of content that you can leverage over time. It's never going to be one.
I'll say, I'll finish it this way. Consistency of message and varying the delivery mechanism, right? You want to say the same thing over and over again in a simple way, but vary the way that you do that, and that'll keep people going. Do you want me to play
7 times 7 ways?
I'll do a quick integrity commercial, then we'll jump to the next topic.
Great.
This is another one that's about a minute. We just made it. It's a pharma parody.
Do you suffer from feelings of pressure to succeed at all costs, urges to bend or ignore the rules, a temptation to circumvent the norms of good workplace behavior? Well, there's good news. Integrity can help. Integrity helps deal with feelings that might lead to more serious problems, like these. Antitrust, bribery, bullying, corruption, conflicts of interest, discrimination, fraud, harassment, insider trading, intimidation, kickbacks and payoffs, lying, manipulating reports and records, misuse of company resources, retaliation, sharing confidential information, stealing, and even making jokes at other people's expense that you might think are funny, but sometimes hurt other people's feelings and make your coworkers think a little less of you. Work is hard, and there's pressure to perform. A daily dose of integrity can help. Side effects may include confidence, kindness, pride, respect, improved decision-making, an equitable and efficient workplace, success and advancement, and a happier disposition. Ask yourself if integrity is right for you.
That's so good, dude. That's hysterical. I mean, who's not going to like laugh watching that? I mean, that's funny. I don't care who you are. That's funny. You know what I mean?
The funny thing is this is like when I first started the company like 6-7 years ago, I made just a PDF of that idea. And then I was thinking about the other day, I was like, why haven't I made this into a real commercial? It's literally like a voiceover artist and some stock photography and text. So it wasn't.
It's so funny.
It's
a good script too. It's very funny.
We got a lot.
So, part of what I just want to close the loop on Philippe, because he came back and he said there's just way too many Slack messages. I think a variety of messages, a variety of types of content, whether it's videos or it's TikTok style videos that your team has made, if it's just making your own like memes. I mean, you have to produce content in order to because that's what we're competing against. Okay. Thanks for those examples.
Sorry.
Go ahead, buddy.
I keep jumping on your ending
No, you're
note,
good.
but I want to say that like sometimes we have the expectations are a little bit off. If you had 5,000 employees and you got 500 people to follow the Slack channel, or maybe even 100, maybe that doesn't sound like a lot, but it's 100 more that you wouldn't have gotten before. Do you know what I mean?
It's 100 more like advocates for your program. It's 100 more like de facto ambassadors for this culture of integrity that everybody at their heart wants and has wanted, going to their first job, like we talk about, like that's how we have to change our culture. We have to change it by changing ourselves and how we're interacting with folks to unlock that participation and engagement. And storytelling, look at this segue, Ronnie. And storytelling is a great way to do that.
Good. I like it.
Thank you. All right, so let's talk about storytelling, and let's look at a quick example, and then we'll see some applications for compliance.
Hey, Tim, show Joel how everything you touch turns into Skittles.
That's awesome.
Is it awesome? Well, you can't hold your newborn baby boy in your arms. Did you feed and dress yourself this morning? I didn't. I met a man on the bus today. I shook his hand. He'll never see his family again. I guess that's pretty awesome. Excuse me.
Touch the rainbow. Taste the rainbow.
All right, I love it. That's a pretty good commercial. All right, so we're gonna blast through. Sorry to ruin movies for you, but here we go. Most all stories fall into any number of there's like 7 to 12 different sort of story arcs. So one classic one is Man in Whole. So this is Martian. This is my favorite Christmas movie, Die Hard. Wizard of Oz is another example of that, where things are okay, something bad happens, and then they're digging themselves out of their hole and landing in a better spot. Boy Meets Girl. This is from my 2 of my favorite movies, are kind of a tie of When Harry Met Sally and the other one with that dynamic duo. But this is Boy Meets Girl, similar type of an arc. Things are good, they get really bad, and then they work to get better, okay? And then finally, The Rags to Riches. This is from my favorite Disney movie, Cinderella. Things get good, they get really bad, and then they get better. So Shawshank Redemption or Slumdog Millionaire is another example of that. So let's talk about the value in storytelling and why us leaning into that is such a powerful mechanism.
Yeah, well, and I feel like sometimes when we present this stuff, this is just us being like overly analytical about stuff, because all the things we're talking about, we kind of know that these things are true. We know, like, when you laugh the most, it's when you and your buddies are telling stories to each other. It's rarely actually telling jokes. It's like there is the brain science behind it. It does tap into emotional connections, as does music. But like, you have you're weaving a story which usually has interesting characters, obstacles to overcome, conflict, suspense, heroes and villains. Like all the stories, the different styles that you said have those elements. And think about compliance. One thing that drives me crazy is we present case studies, which, to teach. But the story behind that, I mean, it's fraud and corruption. Right. I mean, it's like there's these people who did crazy things. I had a client tell me once that one of their reps in another country, like they were out drinking and then they all, with some television cameras and they mooned them, and they were wearing the logos of their company. Nice. It's a really interesting story. And so I think a lot of us in compliance are familiar with presenting stories, presenting case studies. a lot of the vendors do like scenario-based videos, like you see a scene. That's pretty common. Those can be expensive to make. But I also want to point out that you can present these things in a variety of mediums. There's podcasts, right? Serial, this is the most famous one. All the podcasts tell stories, these crime stories, books. I do a lot of theater. The Moth is like a spoken word, TED Talks. These are all different versions of storytelling. So this doesn't have to mean expensive. It does have to mean that you have to take these very meaty subjects and find a way to make it interesting. It does provide an additional advantage of, like, I think of speak up culture all the time. One is like promoting speak up culture. That's commercials. There's a hotline. There's ways to do this. But stories are a good way to unpack the nuances of what happens after you speak up. What happens when someone does bad behavior? What are the consequences of those things? These are things that require a little bit more nuance to them, and stories are a great way to do that.
I guarantee you that there are people in the organization that have spoken up either in your current company or in a previous organization, and they've had a good or bad experience. Keep in mind that the stories that you can gather and you can crowdsource from people in your company, they don't have to come from within your company. They can come from other experiences they've had, and you can tie that back to how our culture of integrity is trying to prevent something like that happening. And that, in order for that to happen, we need to all kind of guard this culture and, speak up about things. Using those kind of emotional experiences that people have had and leveraging those within your organization to draw a distinction from the type of culture that you're trying to be from the one that you're trying to avoid, to Ronnie's point, is a very easy, non-expensive way, also called cheap. It's a very cheap way to push out, again, more content. So look for those kinds of stories. There are people within the company that are high integrity people that are willing to, whether, outside of your department, I'm saying that want to leave the place better. As our friend Wendy Badger says. So find those people and utilize them. These ethics ambassadors can be such a great face for the message, because it's a message that I think we all want.
To build on your point, there's obviously most of these companies have scrub cases, right? So you certainly can use scrub cases from your company, but there's also the sentencing guidelines, that also usually talks about things that happen in the news. And then things that happen in the news. I remember a couple years back, like Phil Mickelson, was putting and he missed, and he went and just grabbed the ball before he made a major breach in etiquette. And I remember one of my clients was like, yeah, we just put it in the newsletter and talked about the gray area issues around what he just did. And they use that as a jumping off point to talk about integrity.
I mean, there's thousands of these examples around, and you can just screen record on your phone, and you can add some text over it and start to post it. But to your point, if we can open up our mind to these different examples around us, things in the news, and leverage those things to, kind of piggyback our message on top of, that's, again, a very easy way to do it. Let's look at, so we're probably going to run a little bit long. So if you have to go, the replay, of course, will be sent around, and you can check the replay on YouTube. That should be up probably by tomorrow. So don't think you're going to miss it. So let's look at tales from the from the hotline, maybe.
Here's what I'll do. I'm going to switch the order. I'm going to do the least expensive storytelling technique first, and then I'll show you an example of another one. But this will just take a sec.
Yeah, great.
I love the idea of so the cheapest way is a case study, right? Like a written thing. But that can be a story. We read books. It can be a story.
Right.
So take your case study and find the real juicy pieces of information, put that in there. But this is an example of just a 4-panel. Did I push this yet? A slideshow. So here we go. Another video call. Fun. Whoa, you did what? Push the next one. Yikes. I wish I could unhear that. So I'll just pretend I didn't. So that was a way to set up the fact when we were doing risks while working from home, that people were ignoring bad behavior that they might otherwise not do. We followed this up with a video, which I don't think we have here, but we then followed up with a 60-second video that landed the point about, hey, when you see bad behavior, even if no one's watching, make sure to speak up about it. But I just want to point out that's a little story in 4 panels.
Right.
You probably could have added a 5th panel. Now that we made it a video, but the 5th panel would be like, hey, if you see something, say something, speak up, to keep bad behavior in check.
Right.
All right. This is actually, so I tend to not film as many scenes just because it's an expensive way to make content, although scenario-based things, scenes and vignettes that look like your people is always a good idea. So this is a series we made called Tales from the Hotline, which is an animated, we basically got real stories, had some of our comedians sort of change the names and reshape them. So it's all based on real stories, and then animated it. And we found it to be like a fun storytelling technique. I'll show like a minute and change of this one.
Okay.
The hotline is a place where employees can anonymously report workplace concerns. These are their stories.
This story features a senior employee in our company, Samantha, who is training a new hire, Andre. Samantha explained that when traveling for business, you could expense just about anything. For example, she said she might go to Starbucks and purchase a $25 gift card, presumably for a client, but she'd use it for herself. Basically, she says, as long as you stay under the threshold, no one will ever pay attention. Andre's spidey sense was ringing. Or, I guess it's tingling. Spidey doesn't ring, he tingles. If you don't know what that means, it means his instincts are telling him something isn't quite right. But Samantha tells him, it's not a big deal. We work hard, we do good work. They owe us. Andre isn't quite sure what to do. It's his boss after all, and he's new. So he looks up the company code of conduct and checks out some policies and finds out that everything Samantha told him was a bunch of baloney. He finds the contact info for ethics and compliance and reaches out to get advice and talk through his options. Ultimately, he decides to contact our company's confidential ethics helpline, which, if you didn't know, is run by an independent third party. The report starts an investigation, and as it turns...
Yeah. So there we go. That's a sort of a edited version down of a single narrator telling a story about something that happened and then bringing it to life. One of my favorite examples is I was inspired by the show Drunk History. If anyone's ever seen Drunk History, it was just so funny to me. It's like a person telling us, they get them drunk, which is fun, the part of the bit, but they literally tell a story about history and then they get actors to sort of recreate it. And I learn about history because it's such a fun delivery mechanism. So anyway, that's a version of single narrator telling it in an interesting way, but it's really about an important subject, and that's okay.
All right, let's jump to so we saw that one. Let's talk about spokesperson and dialogues. This is a really smart mechanism to get this kind of a spokesperson or a mascot. Talk to us a little bit. So actually, let's do a little activity. This is going to be for 1,000 points each. We're going to blast through a couple of these spokespeople, and you got to tell us what company they represent, okay? So here's your first one. 1,000 points, no cheating, go. Okay? You got it. That's right. Next one, who's that? You knew it. You knew it just from the silhouette. Isn't that amazing? And then what about this guy? Remember this guy? Everybody knows this guy. The most interesting man in the world. Okay, so why is this? What's the value of the spokesperson, Ronnie?
Well, yeah, so this is one, and again, fits with commercials too. Like some of this is just arbitrary ways of just trying to define the information. But I like the idea of a mascot, a spokesperson, for a variety of reasons. One, it's typically some charismatic personality, right? It can represent a part of your program, like it could represent your audience. It could be somebody who's like an employee or a leader, or it also can represent an aspect of your audience. It could be, integrity or empathy or a stick-to-itiveness. Like you can create a character that represents different personalities. I once made a thing that was like a whole news team. It was like a fake news show, and each news anchor had a different quality of the company that they represented. But like a host, if you're doing it for simplicity, they can speak directly to your audience. They can interview people, even if it's animated. Do you remember Space Ghost? Like Space Ghost was an animated character that interviewed real people. It's also a connective device. So once you have this character mascot, personality. You can attach it to all of your policies and resources. So when they see this character logo or mascot, they immediately think of compliance or whatever your brand name is. So I love the fact that it's a connective device. It's very specific to your audience, and obviously we're familiar with it. You know, we all know that there's Ron Popeil used to do the late night shows. He was a product pitch man. Well, the product is compliance and the speak up resources, et cetera, you know, or it could be, you know, your gecko or your, I actually once tried to make a video. It was called The Most Compliant Man in the World. You know, it was a total rip-off parody of The Most Interesting Man in the World. And our lawyers wouldn't let us do it because you could probably do it internally, but we were selling a product and they were like,
It was a little too close.
It was a little too close, but it was really, you know,
the Dos Equis guy is very litigious, you know?
It was probably fine, but like, you know, our lawyers wouldn't let us do it. But anyway, like that's a perfect example. The most compliant man in the world, you know, stay compliant, my friends. I mean, it's
just this sort of through line. It's this anchor point in all of your messaging that can help really tie it together and have that sort of consistent voice. And, you know, to Ronnie's point, I think it's becoming easier and easier to do that. So that could be a person. You can, you know, get your own personal Krista Wolf, perhaps, and you can have a person be your mascot, or you can just get, you know, like Ronnie said, a common mascot or a common character that is the embodiment of it. But again, you have to experiment with things and try different things. So let's look at a couple of examples on how you've leveraged in an ethics and compliance context this spokesperson type of a model.
Sure. So I'm going to show you an animated one first, which was this is for Ferguson International, which is like plumbing supplies. So we kind of wanted to go with like an HGTV builder type of character. So this is a minute of Do It Right, Rick.
Hey, it's me, Do It Right, Rick. You might remember me from the hit shows From Here to Integrity and the original Kings of Compliance. But today, I'm here with the new DIY Do It Right, Rick tip. We all know it's important to have a strong foundation. If a crack appears, we need to address it before it spreads. If you don't, then small leaks become big leaks. Mold and other nastiness start to seep in. Pretty soon you're living in a place where no one wants to live. Gross! This is also true when we're talking about integrity. That's why Ferguson provides a whole support system of people, policies, and learning resources to provide us with a strong foundation for integrity and compliance. It's kind of awesome. Remember, integrity is one of Ferguson's core values. And it isn't something that we have or don't have. It's something we all have to work on every day to maintain. Integrity means doing the right thing, even when no one's looking. So, let's hold ourselves to a high standard and keep our foundation strong. That's right. The strong foundation thing before was a metaphor. Together, we can help keep Ferguson on the level. You like that? Because it's two meanings. And that seemed a lot more clever in my head. Anywho, this is Do It Right, Rick saying, if you're going to do it right. Oh, man.
There we go. That's Rick. And so they have, you know, a limited budget. So we make a handful of videos a year, but then they just slap Rick on everything else and make their own thought bubbles and speaker bubbles. So it's like Rick has become a little rock star within the company. And I love it. It's a connective device. That adds a little flavor, even if it's something that's more serious.
Listen to what Wendy just shared. At one company, I think it was a federal student loans. Hey, Wendy. The compliance team's mascot was Professor Norbert Hootsberg, and he was a professor-looking owl who wore glasses and a graduation cap. His clothes, hat, glasses, and outfits matched the colors associated with the company's core values. He was very popular. He sent the invitations to the Compliance Rocks events. Rocks is resources for organizational knowledge symposium. So again, it's a little character. It kind of personifies your program a little bit. And again, separates you from other compliance programs that people have come in contact with in the past.
BMO is the first one I did. This is like 5-6 years ago. BMO Financial, Bank of Montreal. Their ethics office uses words and actions matter. So we had a character named Actions Matterly. And we flew to Toronto and did Person on the Street, where we interviewed people about integrity. We had Actions Matterly doing like over the top, you know, Billy on the Street stuff. Pretty great. And then what we started doing during the pandemic was doing them Zoom style. So took the cost down. character interviewing somebody over Zoom. And I love the fact that it helps you involve people, whether it's a subject matter expert, the compliance office, or a leader talking about integrity. You just do a Zoom call. What we would do is add some comedic value to the host. But like even U.S. Bank's been doing this for years on their own. They do something called the Ethics Ride Share. And they have the compliance officer interview the leader in the back of a car.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
Right? And I talked to them, like, I haven't seen all of them, but they're not always funny, but it's just enough of a, what I'll say, shtick, it's just enough of a bit that it's like, oh, they put a little production.
Look at that. They're in a car. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. And so I know
there's something about that, again, it's something about just doing something a little bit different that looks enough like another pattern that's in place. Like, to your point, comedians in cars riding, drinking coffee or whatever, or getting coffee. One of my favorite shows. Do you want to? What other video do you want to jump to now? Because we got a few examples and we have a little bit of time.
I'll show I wanted to show a quick Zoom style.
Yeah,
show.
please.
No, I'll just show like the setup and the interview, just so you get how it works. This one's from. Oh, it's important to know. Dexcom is a medical device company that monitors insulin. So this is there's some insulin jokes in this, but
okay, buckle up for these insulin jokes.
It's time for Ethically Speaking, the talk show where compliance is king. And now here's your host, Sugar Levels.
Hi, and welcome to Ethically Speaking. I'm your host, Sugar Levels. And my enthusiasm for ethics never fluctuates. To hear what employees actually think, we'd like to take you to a segment we call Compliance Confessions. Let's get into it.
It's like getting called to the principal's office.
They're like corporate cops. Now that I've heard a lot.
We move fast, and they're like speed bumps that stop us and make us go, rank. That's not what a speed bump sounds like.
They are like Debbie Downer, but less fun.
Whoa, that segment casts more shade than a wraparound porch. Why is compliance such a pain in the
I think that's a pretty common misconception, and it's a stigma that our department carries with us. That's just frankly not true. We do have a lot of policies and procedures that I think can seem.
All right. So I just wanted to show there's like we do a setup. In this case, we had involved their employees making self-tapes of saying some of these things, and then we did an interview with members of their compliance team to sort of debunk those things head on. So anyway, I thought that was sort of a fun way to do it. We started to do more and more of those just because, again, it's not particularly expensive once you come up with the concept, and then it's setting up a Zoom meeting. I made one for the Federal Reserve Bank of New York called Infedstigate, and we infedstigate privacy and we infedstigate conflicts, and we, it just shows you they're very conservative, but they get the value of involving different subject matter experts and people giving face time to the compliance team, which is helpful. And
I mean, again, that's not that big of an ask to get a little face time from an executive for something like this that you can then leverage multiple times throughout the year, or to put into a video like this. But again, it takes that, that initiative to do something different, and the willingness to start thinking a little bit differently on how our ethics and compliance communications are really being, pushed out across the organization.
Why don't we wrap up with just, questions and thoughts, because we're a little bit over the time. I mean, obviously I could show videos all day, but
Rosemary said, are there examples for these somewhere in public? I'd love to show some of these examples to my leadership. Do you have a link for something like that, Ronnie, or should they just find it in the YouTube replay?
Well, so you obviously can use the YouTube replay. You also can email me separately, and we have hundreds of examples, both custom ones that we've done or in our library that we're happy to share. But I have to set that with like an expiring link and stuff like that. But I'm happy to do it if the people contact me separately.
So what, should they just go to the LNE website?
Yes. And
okay, so here's the L&E website. You can hit this QR code here. You, of course, can Google Learnings and Entertainments or just hit Ronnie up anywhere. Ronnie, why don't you drop your cell phone in the chat and maybe they can just text you. I'm just kidding.
All right. I'll put my email in the chat. Let me figure out how to do that.
Okay, so that's for Rosemary. Another question from Christina Meyer. Can you share a little bit more about the legal aspects of using characters internally? I think the main law is about, are you kind of getting, using it for commercial benefit? But what kind of guidance can you give on that? Ronnie, you being a lawyer and all.
Yeah, well, sorry, I'm sitting here trying to figure out where the chat thing is. Maybe someone can type in my email address on there. Yeah, well, look, so he does point it correctly that I'm not a lawyer. What I've come across is usually things that are for internal use are pretty low on the risk scale in terms of parody. So like you can, parody laws allow you to do quite a bit. Like that's why SNL can do that. But if you're making a product, like I might have more restrictions around what I'm doing if I'm parodying something and then selling something. So the risks are a little bit higher. So that's why, like on the Most Interesting Man in the World, our lawyers at the time were like, yeah, you might want to be careful. Krista, I'll give her a shout out again. The Agilent folks, they changed the words to a song, whereas again, I might not do that in a product because I need to get the rights for that song, but for an internal,
for educational purposes. Yeah. For
educational purposes. I think so you have to check with your internal lawyers about what your risk level is or risk tolerance is. But yeah. It's pretty common thing to do internally, particularly if it's self-made and not to make money.
So I would say this is not legal advice, but it's fine. So you can do it. All right. Why don't you show us one more example, Ronnie? I'm going to look through the chat and see if there's any other questions that we can grab as well. Thanks a lot, man. We've gotten some good feedback in the chat. Thank you guys for all that feedback.
Let's see what I got here. It's another talk show. We got, I can't, jams, confessions, Fed. What is this? Can't tell what that is. Kickback. Oh, well, it's a talk show. Here, I'll just do a quick commercial. Again, this is another parody of the breaking news thing about the code of conduct. It's about a minute.
Breaking news! The Code of Conduct has been found. I repeat, the Code of Conduct has been found. Turns out it was never actually missing. Apparently, it has been available as a workplace resource the whole time. It has. Yeah, I mean, I knew that. Yeah, okay. This certainly is good news for all you employees out there looking for guidance on how best to navigate the rules of appropriate workplace behavior. Details to follow. Thanks and be good.
Maybe that could be a sting for somebody.
Well, we had a lot of fun doing it. We're like, let's just you do the music, and
it's great, man. That's very funny.
A fun way to, yeah. Why don't we? There's a bunch of other stuff loaded in here, but I feel like.
But we hope you guys found some value in this today. The main message here is that we have to do things differently if we're going to be crowdsourcing risk intelligence and having those channels open to push insights at the point of risk. Hacking these human sensors in our organization is going to be how we elevate. Using companies like Ronnie and using these kinds of techniques can really give you a lot of leverage and really get your message echoing throughout the organization. But it takes doing things a little bit differently, and it takes committing to solving for the outcome. You're going to try a bunch of things. Some are going to work. Some are not going to work. Some content you generate, you're going to be really excited about it, and it's going to fall flat. Some you're going to think is kind of a throwaway, and that's going to go viral on Slack. But until you're out, out there experimenting, you're never going to make anything new happen. Any parting words for us, Ronnie?
parting words is yes, be interesting, be fun, be provocative, use the different entertaining devices that you use, the things that you enjoy. And by the way, there's no magic bullet. There's no right answer what people are going to find fun and interesting. The most important thing is that you are being interesting, thoughtful, provocative, fun. You bring your full personality to work, because what you're teaching people is that you are a trusted resource, and people.
And you're a human being.
And you're a human being. People they won't ask for advice if they're bored, annoyed, or afraid. You want to teach people
bored,
that
annoyed, and afraid. Those are the blockers. Yeah.
Yes. So you want to be, the more that you are a regular person that's approachable and fun, that's more important than them knowing the rules. So these are just different ways to help you get to a broader audience. But by you sharing those fun and interesting things makes the department more fun and interesting. And again, it's sort of a halo effect, hopefully, on your program.
Right. Couldn't have said it better myself. Join us next week. We're going to be talking about hot topics. Those are always some of our widely attended episodes. And please share this with your friends. If you like the clips that we put out, if you find them valuable, share them to your network so we can spread some of these new techniques and really start to elevate our workplaces. We're all fighting the same battle, and appreciate you, Ronnie, for coming on, being so generous with your time and sharing some of these techniques. Hope you guys all enjoyed it, and we will see you next Thursday.